Evening, Cherries fans, and welcome to the latest opposition preview show here on Up the Cherries in all departments. After a 2-2 draw against the recently relegated West Brom, we've travelled to Nottingham to face Forest, who was stunned by a resolute Coventry side at the Coventry Building Society Stadium, losing 2-1. To preview this weekend's match, it is a pleasure to welcome onto the show the editor of Nottingham Forest News, Lee Clarke. How are you doing, Lee?
All good
to have you on the show.
You?
Yeah, very well. Thanks, mate. Very, very well. So, firstly, do tell us a little bit about your story and what you do for Nottingham Forest News.
So basically, we are a site that what our little tag is we like to think that we're for the fans, by the fans. So we won't sort of do any rehashing of news and that sort of stuff. We'll always try and move the story on. So lots of opinion, lots of fan feedback, that sort of stuff. And basically in the 2.5 years we've had the site now, it's continued to grow, and words getting out there of what we do, and fans seem to like coming to us for the content.
Fantastic. So onto the football. Forest suffered an opening day defeat to Coventry on Sunday, a game which was on Sky, but please do give us the Forest perspective on that performance and result.
It was a stereotypical game with two halves. I think we were saying at half time that not that we'd turned a corner. Obviously, in 145 minutes of a 46-game season, you can't ever say you've turned a corner. But from the back end of last season, it looked like we dictated the tempo a little bit. We did try and we tried to go forward, but as is always the case, when we get a goal, we tend to stop trying to go forward, which is a bit of a shame. But we did get the goal. It was a good goal as well. Nice ball out from the back. Brennan Johnson using his blistering pace, lovely cross, and Lyle Taylor, that's the sort of service he's needed since he came in, to be honest. So yeah, the first half we thought we were really good, but then the second half it was just the same old situation from last season, which was so often our undoing, really. Protecting a 1-goal lead in the Championship, no matter who you're playing, is always going to be a risk. And sadly, I do think both of their goals were pretty lucky. I've got to be honest. I think the first goal, there were a couple of ricochets in the box, and then it's just landed to the player who couldn't miss. And then the second, I think you've got to look at the goalkeeper a little bit for the second. But again, it's just little bits of naivety, probably from having a lot of young lads on the pitch, that have cost us what would have been a decent point, really.
The Forest side boast several cherries as well, though, of course, in Lewis Grabban, Harry Arter, and of course Lyle Taylor, who scored. How have they fared, and what do you expect from them this season?
Well, last season was a bit of a disaster for scoring goals. Only Derby scored less than us, and they stayed up on the final day. So that was a lot of people naturally point to your strikers, and both Grabban and Taylor were, culprits of not scoring enough. I think in Grabban's defence, he did have probably 5 injuries last season. So when you're Grabban's age, you're not going to recover from those, especially when we were playing Saturday, Tuesday pretty much every week last season. He was always fighting a losing battle. But I think Lyle Taylor, it was interesting because I've always thought Lyle Taylor would be a better player with fans in the ground. I don't know why. I've just got this perception that he seems to thrive on the crowd noise and the fans getting behind him. And I think what he did when he scored yesterday, I think that showcased that. He was in front of us giving it, pumping his chest, and he looked really fired up for it. And I think that's what Lyle Taylor can possibly, where he can possibly improve this season. As with regards to Harry Arter, he's not even got squad numbers. So I think, I don't think we'll see him play for us again, to be honest.
It's a real shame because, of course, what he did for the Cherries, yeah, he was a fantastic player for us. He did go through a lot of heartbreak, and especially there was that moment against Manchester United when we were in the Premier League, which I won't go over it, but he went through some personal heartbreak, and he was strong enough to go out on that pitch. But he's never seemed to find his feet since. From his performances last season, what did you make of him?
To be honest, when we signed him, I thought it was a great signing. We played Fulham just after football had restarted after lockdown, and he run the show. Everyone was kind of saying on Twitter we'd love a player like Arter, and then 3 months later we've actually signed him, and it's on paper it seemed like a good signing. I think what we quickly discovered was that at Fulham he played alongside Harrison Reed, young lad, plenty of legs, did lots of his running for him. Of course, when he came into Forest, he often started with Jack Colback, very similar sort of player. And then a bit later on, he played a little bit with Ryan Yates, who is still finding his feet himself. So you can't really compare Ryan Yates with someone like Harrison Reed, who is already a proven championship performer. But he just looked way off the pace. I don't know what it was. I don't know whether it had been a case of him riding the crest of a wave of Fulham doing really well the year before. But for whatever reason, he's just looked really, really off the pace whenever he's turned out for us. And Chris Hughton came in and quickly it was clear he didn't fancy him.
And Lyle Taylor's really found his place at Forest. Surely there's got to be big hopes that he'll get 20 goals a season.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, 20 might be ambitious because I think Lyle Taylor likes to do other stuff. But I think he got 11 in a pretty ordinary Charlton team. So I think if he can get double figures, that would be a great start. And the sooner he gets there, the better. It's going to be interesting, though, because I think we would still like to add another striker. If there has been talk up here that if we do add another striker, then Lyle Taylor could actually be one that Chris Hughton looks to get rid of. But if all he can do at the minute with Grabban's actually isolated at the moment. It came out yesterday.
Okay.
We did have some issues with COVID that saw 2 friendlies get cancelled. So Grabban's one of the guys who's still isolating. So for the first couple of weeks, Lyle Taylor could find himself with a chance in the team. And all he can do is try and get a few goals and prove a few people wrong.
One of the players that you did sign was a striker. You made a couple of signings in the transfer window so far. Do tell us a little bit more about those players.
Well, Ethan Aldworth is a goalkeeper, backup goalkeeper. After Bryce Samber's performance yesterday, he might find himself, becoming number one quicker than he might have expected. I think the problem is with the goalkeeping department, Samber's not really had any real competition. Jordan Smith has been pretty loyal to Forest, but he's never really looked capable of, being good enough to be a regular in a championship team. But I think now we've got the highly rated American in place. I think he was always going to play in the Cup on Wednesday. So who knows, after Samber's mistake yesterday, if he impresses enough. I don't think Chris Hughton will drop him just yet, but all he can do is try and perform, and hopefully, he'll think that he can get the gloves off him. And then the other guy who signed is Philip Zinkernagel from Watford on loan. Chris Hughton's pretty much wanted him all summer, but it's just been a case of, as is usually the case with signing anyone on loan from a Premier League team, they've got to get their players in first. Watford signed an attacking option on Friday, I think it was. And Saturday morning, it was announced that Zinkernagel had signed. So he came on for 20 minutes yesterday. It was difficult for him because we were winning 1-0 and we didn't really have any intention of going for a second goal. So it was a bit of a backs to the wall job for him. But I'm sure once he gets up to speed and with the way we play, he'll probably be a good addition too.
And Chris Hughton is a manager that does know his way out the Championship League. He's done it with Newcastle. He did it with Brighton. What confidence do you have that he can do that again with Forest?
That's the $1 million question, really, because you're right. What you say, he has proved he's done it before, but what he's got to start showing the Forest fans is that he's going to adapt a little bit. I think last season he was dealt a bit of a tricky hand, and people keep mentioning that he had all season except for the first 4 games, but we'd lost the first 4 games. So naturally going into that environment, it wasn't just a case of managing the team. He had to kind of lift morale as well. Obviously, we'd spectacularly missed out on the playoffs the year before, so the confidence really was on its knees. So I personally cut him a bit of slack last season, but I think that kind of situation yesterday where we basically throw 3 points away, in the last 9 minutes of the game, it's certainly not going to help his case. I just think we've got the players to kill teams like Coventry off, and that's no disrespect to Coventry. They were very, very ordinary for 70 minutes of yesterday.
Yeah.
But because we decided to get the goal and cling on to it, with fans back in the ground now, they sensed that if they got one, they could actually go on and win it, and they did. So I think Chris Hughton is a very respected man. He's a very intelligent man, always speaks very well. But I think he's got to kind of put a little bit more trust in the players he's got, especially now that Johnson's back. We've got Alex Myton on the other wing. Very exciting options. Let's go for games. Let's get the second goal. Let's get the third goal, and let's really start killing teams off. Because I think if he doesn't adapt and do that, then he's going to be in trouble. With the new CEO now in place, he's not going to be able to get away with another season like last season.
And from watching the game yesterday, I've got to agree with you. I think Forest were much the better side, especially in the first half. Coventry, it was a bit of a smash and grab from them really at the end, and absolutely. I can understand the frustration that you have about that. Do you expect Bournemouth to really see a bit of a resurgence from Forest and a bit of reaction off the back of that game?
Well, I think the beauty of this season is that every team's first home game, you probably saw it Friday night, it's the first game back in. The atmosphere is going to be, it should in theory be incredible. Fans should be really up for it. I think what we did so well yesterday was we kind of didn't give their fans a chance to get behind their team because we started so well. So I think the first away game for any team is always going to be tough this season because everyone's buzzing to be back at football, and in theory, the fans should be, fully supportive for 90 minutes. But I'd like to think there'd be a response. I mean, we are a little bit short on bodies, to be fair, especially if Grabban's set to miss out again. Joe Worrell missed out yesterday, and we're not sure whether he's going to be fit as well. So we are a little bit short. It's a bit of a patched up Forest, even though we're one game in. But fingers crossed, it will be a bit more of a spirited, complete performance rather than just a 45-minute showing.
Do tell us a little bit more, Lee. You touched on a couple of players there, but do give us a little bit more of an update on the Forest team? Who do we expect to be facing?
So I think obviously it's quite early, but I think Samba will play in goal. Jordan Gabriel, who's come back on loan from Blackpool, will probably play at right back. There is talk that we're signing another right back, but whether we get one remains to be seen. At centre back, I don't think there's too many. If Joe Worrell and Scott McKenna are both fit, I don't think there's too many better partnerships in the Championship, to be fair. If Worrell isn't fit, Loic so hobbled off yesterday, so he probably won't play. So it'd probably be Tobias Figueiredo dropping in. At left back, that's where I'm really concerned for the Bournemouth game in particular, because Guy Tambong played there yesterday. He's just not up to it. The less said about Guy Tambong, the better. Again, left back's another area we're looking to add. The midfield, yesterday we played Colback and Yates, both much of a muchness for me. I think this is another problem we have. We have a good core of attacking players, but we don't have the progressive midfielder to get them the ball quick enough. So I think Cafu might come in for the home, with us being at home. He might come in for Colback. And then the front four will probably, we might make one change. Brennan Johnson will start. He was absolutely brilliant yesterday. I thought Joe Lolly he looked a little bit sharper, but his end product's still lacking a little bit. He's been injured for a long time. So I think Zinkernagel might come in for him. And Alex Myton will probably play on the wing as well. And then up front, it's going to have to be Lyle Taylor, because I can't see him throwing Grabban in for a game like Bournemouth. If he's still isolated, he might get back into training later this week, but it'd be a bit of a gamble. So, yeah, it'd be a similar team, I think, but with a couple of tweaks.
It's fair to say, I think last season, Forest underachieved. Surely this season, considering Hughton's had a little bit more time, I know he'd come in on about October, didn't he, last season?
Yeah, just at the beginning of October, yeah.
Yeah. So surely he's had a bit of time now. Where do you think you'll finish?
I mean, this will depend on who you ask. I think a lot of this is the thing with us as a football club. I think we do have a lot of fans who, despite the fact we've not been in the Premier League for over 20 years, they presume that we're Nottingham Forest, we should be challenging for the playoffs. But I think the sooner some of the fans realise that we're not a big club per se anymore. I mean, some some outsiders might still see us as a big club because of what we've done in the past and that. But for me, as a 34-year-old, I've seen a couple of promotions, while I've actually been going to games, sort of old enough to go to watch the games myself, it's just been one League One promotion and a couple of championship playoff campaigns. So I think the sooner some of the supporters lower their expectations, the better. But at the same time, I don't think we're a fussy bunch in the sense that we don't demand to win games every week. But what we do want to see is a bit of entertainment. We want to see a team that is going to give their all for the badge on the chest and also try and win a game of football. This pragmatic approach is just not. I just don't think it works in the Championship. Very few pragmatic. Let's sit on a 1-0 lead. Teams get promoted these days. I think the last one I can think of was probably Derby when they did it. Billy Davies got about 17 1-0 wins, I think, when he did that. But it just doesn't seem to work anymore. There's too many teams and too many of the modern day managers now. You look at West Brom on Friday against you guys. They were going at it they were 2-2 up. Sorry, it was 2-2 with seconds left and they're away, and they're still trying to win the game. And that would, under Chris Hughton, that just doesn't seem like it would ever happen. So it's a difficult question. After one game yesterday, obviously it wasn't great, but we need to progress on the 17th. That won't happen, I don't think, because I think if it looks like we're going to finish that position again, I think Chris Hughton will be in trouble. If you're asking me now with the players we've got and the squad we've got where I think we'll finish, I think we'll be extremely lucky to finish in the top half. Because if you ask me at the end of August when we've had a chance to strengthen a little bit more, I think the next 2 weeks are going to be key, next 2 or 3 weeks before the window closes. Hopefully we'll have a few more players in, but right now with this squad, top half would be an amazing season.
With regards to ourselves, and just thinking back to a point you made there, and sitting on those 1-0 leads, that was something that I think towards the end of Eddie's reign, he started to do. He started to bring into the Premier League team. Whereas beforehand, we just used to try and outscore teams. Yeah, we would get battered some weeks. However, the good thing was we would always be going for the juggler. Got a 4-3 win against Liverpool, for example. And that just goes to show that I completely agree with you. The pragmatic approach where just sit on it doesn't work in this league. And yeah, I remember that Derby team. They were incredibly boring to watch. And weren't they the team that finished with the record lowest points?
Yeah, that's the ones. That was it. They had that such good season where they got promoted against the odds. And it was built on Billy Davies. Billy Davies managed us afterwards.
Yeah.
And Derby fans couldn't believe it because we did try and win every game. We'd scored 2 or 3. Remember, we beat Leicester 5-1, and it was just unbelievable football to watch. And Derby fans couldn't believe it because they were like, we used to go 1-0 up and then put 11 men behind the ball. But he did take them up and he didn't take us up. So they had the last laugh with that one, I suppose.
What do you make of this Bournemouth team that you're going to be facing on Saturday, from watching the game the other day and from what you saw last season? And how do you feel, and where do you think the weaknesses are?
It's difficult to pick a weakness. I think I don't like to mention it too much because at the end of the day, it's kind of just rewards for you being in the Premier League for so long. But it's always it's always going to be difficult for us as a team that's not been in the Premier League for 20 years to compete financially with parachute payments, that sort of stuff. So you look at, the front 3 or 4 that you've got is just frightening. Brooks, Danjuma, is he still there? Is he still playing?
Yeah, Danjuma. In fact, I did go to a open training session today, which was quite interesting. He has been out for a brief amount of time, but he looks like he's back. Seems to be moving around okay. So fingers crossed. But there is also the side note that he may leave the club. I know that Liverpool are also sniffing around. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we can keep hold of him. But it's becoming a bit more doubtful by the day.
But that's the thing. I think when you play someone like, I would rather have played Bournemouth after August, when someone might have poached the likes of Brooks or the likes of Danjuma. But yeah, going forward, you looked very good. I guess one real weakness really is Brennan Johnson looked really good yesterday. I noticed Kelly at the back. He played centre half on Friday, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
I'm not convinced he's typically. I think he came through the Bristol City ranks as a fullback, didn't he?
He did, yeah, he did.
No, I always think when you've got a player who's sort of learnt his trade as a fullback, that is always an option to exploit. But ultimately, it's going to be a challenge for us to get anything from the game, because the team that Bournemouth possess is just absolutely brimming with quality. And as much as we have got a sprinkling of quality, we've perhaps not got quite as much. But that said, I think last season we got a 0-0 draw at home against Bournemouth.
Yeah.
On another day, we probably could have won that game, to be honest, in a weird sort of way. So hopefully the crowd will be behind the team. Hopefully, with it being the first home game back with fans in, we can give it a good go. But whichever way you look at it, it's going to be a lot of people are going to be putting an away win on their coupons, I think.
Well, let me throw this out there now. How do you think it's going to go? And with your heart or your head?
It's difficult. After watching that yesterday, I really ought to go with my head. But I'd love to think we could win. I just think it'll lift just one win against the team, because we didn't really beat a team in the top 8 last season. We might have beaten one, but we really struggled against the better sides. I'd love to think we could just lift the spirits a little bit and claim a 1-0 win. I'm not going to back us to score more than one, because I just don't think we will. But I think we are capable of scoring one. So my heart says 1-0, but my head says we'll probably get beat 2-1 again.
I'm probably going to go with 2-1 myself. I went for 2-1 in the West Brom game, so yeah, I haven't got it right so far.
Take a 2-2. If we could have 2-2 again, I'd take that right now, to be fair.
But no, I think it'll be an entertaining game. Forest have got a fair bit of quality about them, and like you say, it depends who you sign during this window. But Chris Hughton has got clubs out of this league before. But I completely agree with you. The sitting on a 1-0 lead is not the way forwards. And in fact, last season, at times we come a cropper of that as well.
I think the strange thing is as well that Chris Hughton, when he took Brighton up, I think they scored about between 70 and 80 goals the year they got promoted.
Yeah.
Well, you don't do that by scoring one a game. So I'm not really sure whether he feels he's not quite got the players to mix things up a bit tactically. I'm not sure, but it does seem a little bit strange that the first game of the new season, after one good half of football, we slip back into our old ways. I just think as much as I hate to say it, that falls on the manager, because it's the manager who's instigating how the team plays on the pitch. So whatever was said at half time clearly didn't have the desired effect. And I know that we had 2 friendlies cancelled. I know we are a little bit behind some teams in preparation, but Hughton said himself, we can't use that as an excuse. It's kind of the season started, and when you drop points early on, it becomes almost impossible to claw them back in this league.
Yeah. No, most definitely, Lee. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this opposition preview, mate. It's been a real pleasure, and all the very best for the rest of the season, of course, after Saturday.
Yeah, likewise.
Cheers, Lee. Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
And thank you, everybody, for joining me again on this opposition preview show. Please do hit the like, subscribe, and the bell button below to be alerted when we release any new videos. Until the next video, thank you so much. I look forward to speaking to you then.